2000 was a fascinating year for doomsayers, playground warriors, and most importantly, gamers. As the 6th generation came to life, those wonderful things we call video games became more lifelike, ambitious, and profoundly, wonderfully weird a lot of the time. No DLC, no roadmaps, just games that worked. Mostly. Now that it's been some 25 years, oh, that's a lot of years, too many years, perhaps. We think it's been enough time to decide which games were the very best in the year 2000. One of the most influential games of any year, and maybe not in all the best ways, The Sims gave players what was at the time the deepest and most elaborate real-time life simulation ever created. It had sex in it. Blurry bits, blurry bits. Imagine a world where you can either be pretty successful, make your way up the career ladder, and marry the woman of your dreams, or you can just piss yourself to death. The choice is yours, friend. It's made all the more interesting by the fact that the game's depiction of life was more often than not just pretty out there, but millions of people just couldn't get enough. I personally remember just absolutely torching my spare time on this by trying to make friends. Pff, what a concept, friends. Itself a spin-off from SimCity, which has been dead behind the shed for years now. The Sims led to several sequels and spin-offs, but the original retains some genuinely pretty wild stuff. While you're probably gonna miss some of the content from later games, it's still fun to pick up for a bit and get lost in as you pretend to be the coolest or pissiest guy in town. A bit of The Sims is always code for a good time. 2000 was a good year for Dreamcast fans, well, in terms of games at least. You see, unfortunately 2000 would also be the last full year for a console which had debuted in North America in late 1999. The Dreamcast really crammed a lot in its short life, didn't it? Truly just a whirlwind experience, further emphasised by brilliant games like this one. Resident Evil Code Veronica, with its strong story, improved controls and gorgeous for the time graphics, is in some opinions the true Resident Evil 3. I think all Resident Evil fans wish this one got as much love from Capcom as 3 did and has done, but it's at least a pretty great goodbye to the classic style of RE that the series made its name on. Continuing the story of the Redfields, this is still one of the most difficult and wonderfully strange entries in the franchise, as the siblings end up on a remote prison island with weird other siblings and sunglass bastards not far behind. Code Veronica has a lot to offer if you can get on its very particular wavelength. This is particularly true if you're playing through all of these RE games chronologically and feel like you haven't been challenged much yet. Code Veronica is absolutely brutal, and not just because you have to put up with quite a bit of Steve Burnside, but it is also brilliant. There was a solid Capcom, and get this one in the remake factory ASAP. More than just a quick dumbing down of the franchise's breakout PS1 hit, Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color, often referred to as Ghost Babel, used the system to its fullest potential to tell some of that alternate timeline nonsense we all love. Following on from those original Metal Gear games, here Snake must team up with Christine Jenner to retrieve a stolen Metal Gear prototype from a converted Outer Heaven. You'll be confronting villains like Slasher Hawk, Lightning Lizard, and Pyro Bison the entire time. One of those guys isn't real. Comment down below which one, and you could win a Steam key for free. But yes, Ghost Babel utilises a brilliant range of colour for the Game Boy Color, and it even incorporates home console mechanics like pressing up against cover. A lot of people don't know this, right? But Ghost Babel is also the very first Metal Gear game to include multiplayer, thanks to the link cable. So yeah, the game has a pretty interesting mix of like the tone and attitude of the PS1 game, but it's like visually and gameplay wise like those early entries for the MSX, NES and elsewhere. Those ones never really go out of style, and even if there are way flashier Metal Gear games these days, let yourself be surprised by this little gem. Don't change the channel, number 17 is up next. The late 90s kickstarted the substantial popularity behind music and rhythm games, with releases like Space Channel 5 for the Dreamcast feeling like the fever dream peak of it. You're playing as a space journalist called Ulala who has to fight back an alien invasion with the power of dance. Yeah, this is the most 2000 game ever made. The game made an immediate impression thanks to its 60s retro space visuals that combined with an energy and atmosphere that somehow felt very specific to the new millennium. Also, it had Michael Jackson in it. Developers really had something cooking for a minute there, didn't they? The style and gameplay of Space Channel 5 will engage you pretty much immediately, even now. What keeps you going is not just the aesthetics, but the game's surreal sense of humour and increasing degree of difficulty. That said, it's not a particularly long or even that tricky game, but you will walk, or moonwalk, away from it with a serious pep in your step. Space Channel 5 even later received ports to the PlayStation 2 and the Game Boy Color, as well as a 2002 sequel and a recent 2020 VR remake. It is a bit slight today, but Space Channel 5 is still well worth a play, no matter the year of the line? Dragon, yes, Dragon. Obviously, the last Spyro game released for the original PlayStation is considered by some to be the last good Spyro the Dragon game ever made. Maybe that's true personally, I don't know. I lost track around the Elijah Wood years like pretty much everyone else, but regardless, Spyro Year of the Dragon is considered by many to be the best of the entries released on the PS1, and, maybe ever. It's an enormously satisfying platformer with visual charm, great gameplay, and pretty considerable depth for the time. The stages this time around were utterly massive, but never boring. Year of the Dragon gave you a huge world to play in, and then made sure that every inch of that world was covered in things to see and do. It also plays way smoother than those prior games. Put this next to the original, and it's clear Insomniac had figured the PlayStation out, inside and out. Year of the Dragon also let players tackle levels as characters other than Spyro, which only adds to the fun, but it's hard to beat cruising around as that little purple dragon boy. It's been many years since we saw something brand new from Spyro, so let's hope it's his year again sometime soon. I'll be pretty cross otherwise. Look, listen, this is not Chrono Trigger, and it doesn't really get up to that level. Few games ever have, really, but if you let it, Chrono Cross is likely to be one of the most engrossing RPG experiences you'll ever have. From the large, vibrant world it gives you to explore as a young Surge, to the wild story, the adventure this game sets you on is a constant of new faces and destinations. Even its gimmick featuring dozens and dozens of unique characters you can be recruited into your party is handled with creativity and passion. Though obviously it is a bit annoying how much you'll have to replay stuff to get the full picture. It's also a deeply strange and melancholic game. Where Chrono Trigger felt kinda breezy-ish, Chrono Cross leans into dreamlike imagery, haunting music, and big existential swings. It's not Chrono Trigger 2, it's just its own thing entirely. Well, mostly. With a unique attack system and one of the best soundtracks of the era, Chrono Cross is a moving example of this genre firing on every cylinder. It might not be for everyone, but it is worth its weight in gold. If you weren't of an age to play Pokemon Gold and Silver when they were released, meaning you're kind of old now, it's difficult to explain just how feverishly popular Pokemon had grown over just a few years. The games, the anime, the cards, the toys, it was bloody everywhere. Fans were desperate for more, and thankfully what they got wasn't just more of the same, but a pair of sequels that many still argue are the best in the whole franchise. Hey, Silver's got Lugia in it, my favourite Pokemon ever, right next to Gyarados. What's yours? Let me know down below. The basics of Pokemon are still here of course, but the 100 new Pokemon to catch along with the original 150 made the Pokédex feel enormous. It was just overwhelming in an incredible way back in the day. And the soundtrack still hits the nostalgia centers like a thunderbolt from a little yellow rat. But it was the innovations that really stuck here and just blew your tiny little mind. Day and night cycles, the introduction of held items, the surprisingly deep and very eye-opening breeding system, even Pokemon having genders. It all made the world feel richer and more alive. And just when you thought it was over, it let you go back and revisit the entire Kanto region from the first games. You had to be there, man. Ask a fan of Mega Man Legends 2 when Mega Man Legends 3 is coming out, and you just might get to see a full-grown adult cry. Don't even start with Mega Man 13, an excellent sequel to a clever 3D reimagining of the iconic blue bomber. Mega Man Legends 2 improved on its predecessor in a lot of super neat ways. Rather than a figure of justice in the battle against the maniacal Dr. Wily,
but cannot let it fall into Dr. Wily's hands.
Legends featured Mega Man and his partner Raul as treasure hunters in a bright, colourful world, more at home with the best 3D platform adventure games of the period than the relentless 2D action of the main series. Compared to the first game, Legends 2 expanded pretty much everything. More dungeons, more characters, more story, and a greater sense of scale. It took full advantage of its sprawling environments and added depth with upgradable gear, dialogue choices, and light morality mechanics. I love me some of them. Even the platforming, often a weak spot in early 3D games, was handled well here, rarely getting in the way of the fun. It wasn't the most high-profile PS1 release and is notable for being a bit of a flop, but it left a mark on those lucky enough to play it. Mega Man Legends 2 is the kind of sequel that deepens the original while leaving fans desperate for more, which, over 2 decades later, still hasn't come. Sorry to keep reminding you, just look to the skies, maybe? Mere months after the release of Skies of Arcadia in late 2000, the Dreamcast was no more. Officially discontinued in March 2001, it was games like this RPG masterwork that gave fans of the system just cause to mourn its all too brief run. Rest in peace, you beautiful weirdo. Set in a fantastical, sprawling world of floating continents and airborne kingdoms, Skies of Arcadia stands as one of the most underrated JRPGs of, well, all time. It felt larger than life, even on hardware that was already fading away. Exploration is where Sky shines brighter than most 3D RPGs even of today. As Sky Pirate Vice, you're encouraged to chart the skies and uncover secrets, recruit crew members, and get completely swept up in the journey. The story and characters start off fairly light, but grow deeper and more engaging as the game builds momentum. There's an earnest charm throughout that will just constantly chip away at your cynicism, and what a banger of a soundtrack too. For Dreamcast owners, this was the JRPG they could proudly point to as a sign of just how varied and great the system truly was. For everyone else, it's one of those games that still floats just under the radar, but it really shouldn't. It needs at least a modern port. While that might not have been exactly what Super Mario RPG fans were hoping for as a follow-up to one of the most unique Mario games ever made, Paper Mario still ended up being one of the N64 standout games. It helps that it was basically one of the only good RPGs on it, but still. Paper Mario leans into simplicity in the best possible way. There's no junctioning or anything here. The combat system is easy to grasp, but has just enough interactivity and depth to stay engaging, and the badge system lets you tweak your abilities without ever getting bogged down in numbers. It's not the deepest RPG you'll ever play, but it's definitely one of the most effortlessly enjoyable. What really helps Paper Mario endure is its presentation. I mean, just look at it, look at this stuff. The visual style was charming at launch, and it's arguably aged better than any other game from 2000 really. The flat characters and Papercraft world give it a timeless storybook quality, backed by a light-hearted tone and humour that's still some of the most enjoyable across all of Mario. All of it, that's a lot of it. Paper Mario is ultimately an excellent late-stage N64 game that deserves every bit of the love it receives. We're all set for the next entry. Released at the turn of the millennium, this absolute beauty combined graffiti tagging, rollerblading, and anti-establishment flair into something that felt cooler than octopus trousers. Somehow, if you can believe it, Jet Set Radio, or Jet Grind Radio if you want to be particular, was yet another visually dazzling Dreamcast title, but this one didn't just showcase technical muscle and attitude, but in a more offbeat way than Pro Skater. The cel-shaded graphics were revolutionary at the time, creating a bold cartoon world that's since become iconic and heavily imitated. As rival crews and increasingly aggressive police forces try to shut you down, the GGs uncover a deeper conspiracy involving a powerful corporation and a mysterious final record said to summon a demon. 2000 was amazing. This was Sega throwing everything at the wall during its last big hardware push, and Jet Set Radio was one of its most daring swings. When it clicked, skating through Tokyo 2, tagging walls while dodging riot police, backed by one of the most eclectic and energetic soundtracks in gaming, bottle it. Jet Set Radio was simply a game that would shape you in some way if you were lucky enough to play it back then, and is still quite the riot today. Alright, promise, this will be the last time we cover Vagrant Story on the channel, ever. For 3 months. Set in a world enveloped in a terrible civil war, Vagrant Story is one of the many reminders that Square in the late 90s and early 2000s was just in a crazy special place. Vagrant Story is one of the most ambitious and mechanically complex RPGs of its era, and certainly one of the boldest releases on the original PlayStation. Instead of traditional turn-based battles, it features a real-time, rhythmically paced combat system where you pause the action to target specific enemy body parts. You also chain attacks and time your button presses to land powerful combos, adding a light layer of twitchy skill to its otherwise methodical battles. Visually, Vagrant Story pushed the PlayStation to its absolute limit. Its moody cinematic presentation and richly detailed environments created a gothic, almost theatrical world dripping with atmosphere. It was kind of Shakespeare. Cutscenes used dramatic angles and facial expressions instead of voice acting, giving the game a timeless quality. Even today, few RPGs feel quite like it. Yeah, Square's run of titles during this era was virtually unmatched for a developer or publisher, and it's saying something that Vagrant Story, as pretty much perfect an RPG experience as it is, wasn't even the best Square game of the year. We'll let you marvel over what it could be as we move on to number 8. One of the greatest fighting games of all time, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes feels as though you're playing an actual breathing comic book. That comic book is The Punisher if you happen to get Justin Wong in your lobbies. With a staggering 56 character roster, could you imagine a modern fighting game coming out with that many? Pulled from both Marvel Comics and Capcom's deep well of franchises, the game offers near endless team combinations and a fast-paced over-the-top combat system that became a staple in arcades and tournaments alike. Don't worry about the balancing, just don't worry. But what really sets MVC2 apart is its style. The hand-drawn 2D sprites clash gloriously against colourful 3D backgrounds, and the smooth animations keep the action readable even at breakneck speed. This will honestly look amazing in 50 years from now, and even when my eyes have been replaced by Tesla eggs, I will still want to go for a ride. Yeah, that soundtrack, an utterly bizarre mix of jazzy lounge beats and upbeat vocals, that's just genuinely brilliant. Whether you're pulling off absurd air combos or just button mashing for chaos as a giant cactus, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a fighting game icon that would feel amazing in any age. A titanic achievement in the year 2000, a lot of fans will tell you Diablo 2 in any form is one of the very best action RPGs you can play, even today, and probably still is the best the series has ever been. Set in a grim, gothic world teetering on the edge of hell, no, not real, its dark story slowly unfolds across 5 acts, each filled with creeping dread, memorable bosses, and a choking atmosphere. But it's the gameplay that truly cements its legacy as a social status destroyer. At its core, Diablo 2 is a game about loot, builds, and the endless pursuit of power. Its character classes are distinct and highly customizable, with branching skill trees that offer near-endless experimentation. Whether you're summoning hordes of skeletons, hurling fireballs, or whirling through mobs, the flexibility in playstyles is kinda wild. Add to that a ridiculously addictive loot system, socketed gear, rune words, and nightmare-inducing difficulty, and you've got a recipe for obsession, or, at least a little bit of body odor. It's no surprise Blizzard continued supporting the game until 2016. Diablo 2 wasn't just a classic, it was the blueprint for everything the genre would become, and the stink of modern gaming has meant later entries just haven't hit the same. Winner of numerous awards and plenty of critical acclaim, but maybe a bit overshadowed by the more recent bear shagging, Baldur's Gate 2 built on the strong foundation of its predecessor to deliver what many consider one of the greatest PC RPGs ever made. And I'm not joking. Released in 2000 by BioWare, remember when they were good and running on the Infinity Engine, Baldur's Gate 2 elevated the isometric RPG to new heights, blending deep character customization, branching narrative paths, and tactical real-time with pause combat. Based on the advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2 edition rule set, the game offers an astonishing degree of strategic depth. Every party member can be tailored to suit your playstyle, and the sheer number of spells, abilities, and class combinations means no two runs ever feel the same. The writing is equally impressive, layered with political intrigue, personal drama, and moral complexity that rewards careful decision making. And best of all, you can blast through it in a weekend. Only joking, a full completionist playthrough covering every side quest, hidden dialogue branch and optional encounters can easily take well over 200 hours. Over 2 decades later, Shadows of Armor still stands as a towering achievement in RPG storytelling and design, and for many fans, it remains perfect. A sequel to Rare's monumental hit GoldenEye 007, have you heard of it? In everything except name and official James Bond licensing, Perfect Dark is more than just Bond with cleavage. But I'd love someone to stick some boobs on Pierce Brosnan sometime if you're up for that. Perfect Dark expands and improves nearly every element of that GoldenEye formula. It adds smarter AI, more varied objectives, a wider arsenal of weapons, and a fully voiced cast, something few N64 titles could boast. Visually, it was stunning for 2000 and is still considered one of the best looking N64 games, pushing the hardware past its limit, as it does chug a smidge. But Perfect Dark wasn't just eye candy. Its layered gameplay offered stealth strategy, a surprising amount of it as well, and experimentation in a way most shooters at the time didn't, especially those on console. As Joanna Dark, players infiltrated labs and uncovered alien conspiracies, and you just kind of went along with it all, and it was brilliant. It was great. Throw in co-op and competitive multiplayer, plus the classic Rare attention to unlockables and bonus content, and Perfect Dark more than earns its status as one of 2007's finest. Shame we somehow only ever got one more game after this. How did that happen? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was a significant leap, or like nollie, forward from the first game. So much so that for many, Pro Skater 2 remains their favourite in the series and the peak of skateboarding games in general. I'll never forget hearing Guerrilla Radio compressed to within an inch of its life on N64 a year later. No matter where you play it though, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is just plain fun. It takes everything that made the first game a hit and cranks it right up. The controls are super smooth now, and once you get the hang of it, pulling off long trick combos feels seriously satisfying. Manuals basically changed everything, letting you link tricks between ramps and rails like you're on some kind of combo-obsessed train. It's also still ridiculously easy to get into. You can just pick it up and start messing around, but there's loads of depth if you want to dig in as well. Career mode gives you plenty to do, and on top of that, you can build your own skate parks, customize your skater, and even swap out tricks to make your perfect moveset. Also, it's got Spider-Man in it. Add in one of the best soundtracks in video game history, if not the best, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 isn't just a great sports game, it's one of the most generation-defining games ever, and exactly how you should make a sequel. An insanely forward-thinking game for its time, Deus Ex has plenty of that grimy cyberpunk vision to spare, although no one probably wants to be reminded that we're about halfway to the game's time period of 2050. Sorry to do that. Deus Ex throws you into a future where a deadly disease is spreading fast. You play as JC Denton, a cool-headed anti-terrorist agent who quickly finds himself tangled in a massive web of conspiracy, shady organizations, and people getting exploded.
What a rotten way to die.
What makes Deus Ex so special isn't just the story, it's how much freedom the game really gives you. For 2000, this was beyond nuts. It's a mix of first-person shooter, RPG, and immersive sim, letting you approach situations in all kinds of different ways. Do you want to sneak through vents and hack every terminal you see? Go for it. Want to just shoot everyone and then blame the government? Give it a go. It's the kind of game that quietly rewired how people thought about storytelling and pure mechanics in video games, and honestly, the series is long overdue for a proper comeback. But is it the best game of the year 2000? 9. Final Fantasy 9 isn't either. It's number 2. Segue. A return to the series' lighter, more fantasy roots after 2 heavier, more sci-fi, more broody boy installments. Final Fantasy IX could have just repeated the same beats as the earliest games and called it a day. Instead, it became the perfect send-off for the PS1 era and one of the most charming games of all time. That charm offensive starts with Zidane, a cheeky, cheek-obsessed thief out to kidnap Princess Garnet. What really puts 9 above the rest of 2000's RPGs is the cast. Steiner, Freya, Quina, Garnet, and of course Vivi. He alone has one of the most poignant stories the series has ever told, or any RPG has really. Final Fantasy IX strikes a perfect balance between accessible, classic turn-based combat and deep RPG systems that anyone can still pick up. It's packed with secrets, minigames, and beautifully realised towns and dungeons, all tied together by Uematsu's phenomenal soundtrack and also Tetramaster, baby! Visually, it pushed the PlayStation to its absolute limits. I mean, it's wild to even compare this to 7 from a few years prior. Square just kinda mastered the PS1 really. From the expressive character models to the richly detailed environments, Final Fantasy IX still looks like magic. Plenty of games from 2000 were great, but Final Fantasy IX was on another level. But the best game of the year 2000 was, of course... So, how do you follow up the best game of all time? Well, you get very weird and you change a lot of childhoods. Instead of trying to top Ocarina directly, Nintendo went in a different direction. Released just 2 years later, Majora's Mask is one of the darkest, weirdest, and most experimental Zelda games ever made. Set in the doomed world of Termina, Majora's Mask replaces epic fantasy with existential dread, and the scariest thing of all, time management. Ooh. The moon is mad and you have to stop it from crushing everything. What a brilliant setup, honestly, just brilliant. The time is always ticking, characters are trapped in loops of grief and denial, but at least you get to wear some cool masks, right? That mask system lets Link take on different forms, each with its own moves and quirks. There are 20 of them. Deku Link can hop across water, Goron Link can roll around like a wrecking ball, and Zora Link turns the lad into basically a salmon. Some of them are fun, others are surprisingly emotional, and a few are just plain weird. Being like 9 years old and seeing Link constantly getting Jim carried was a pretty formative thing for me. Where Ocarina felt kind of optimistic at the end of the day, Majora's Mask is a lot more moody and offbeat. You can play this game in a lot more modern ways, but I don't know, there's something about playing it on the original hardware in all its murky moodiness that just feels right. And it just feels right that this was the best game of 2000. Those were the best games of 2000. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures, and I will catch you in the next one. Bring your Beyblades.